Imagine opening up a corporate earnings report.
Okay.
Right? And you trace your finger down to the quarterly net income line.
Yeah, the bottom line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finding a $2 billion profit just sitting there. I mean, that is typically a cause for champagne.
Oh, absolutely. That's a massive quarter by almost any standard in the global economy.
Right. But now fast forward just 36 months, you pull up that exact same line item for the exact same company, and the quarterly profit isn't $2 billion anymore.
No, it's a completely different stratosphere.
It is $58.3 billion.
It creates this visceral sense of vertigo for anyone who actually models financial markets.
Oh, I bet.
Numbers like that, they just defy the normal laws of corporate gravity. You simply don't see enterprise-scale businesses multiply their bottom line by, nearly 30 times?
Yeah, in a 3-year window.
Right. You don't see that without fundamentally altering the global economy.
Well, welcome to the Deep Dive to all of you listening out there on the internet. Today, we are looking at NVIDIA's Q1 fiscal 2027 earnings.
Which are just staggering.
Seriously. Net income jumping 211% year over year. Total revenue hitting a record of $81.6 billion.
Wow.
But, the mission of our deep dive today goes way beyond just reading you a balance sheet.
Because there's a much bigger story here.
Exactly. We are unpacking NVIDIA's earnings call, their latest media interviews, and their financial docs to map out what is arguably the largest infrastructure shift in human history.
That's a big claim, but honestly, it's accurate.
We're moving way beyond those simple conversational chatbots we all played with a few years ago. We're officially entering the era of what the industry is calling agentic AI and physical AI.
Yeah, and what we're looking at in these documents is really the financial footprint of that profound technological pivot.
Right.
Demand hasn't just grown, The executive team actually describes it as going parabolic.
Parabolic. That's a strong word for an earnings call.
It really is. But to understand why, we have to completely reimagine what computing even is right now.
Okay, break that down for us.
So data centers are no longer just those passive, temperature-controlled warehouses where society stores its photos and emails and corporate files.
Right, the old cloud storage model.
Exactly. They have transformed into literal AI factories. Their sole operational purpose now is the continuous manufacturing of raw intelligence.
I want to ground this for you, the listener, for a second. You probably used an AI tool this week to, draft a tricky email or maybe summarize a dense PDF.
Sure, we all do.
But what happens when the software stops just drafting the email and starts reading the entire thread, deciding on the best strategic action, updating your CRM database, and then sending the response autonomously while you sleep?
That is the big shift.
Right. And that transition is exactly where this $81.6 billion is coming from.
Yeah, and the breakdown of that revenue tells a very specific story about how quickly the corporate world is adopting that exact vision.
So where is the money actually coming from?
Well, out of the $81.6 billion total, $75.2 billion came directly from their data center segment.
Wow, just data centers.
Yeah, that segment alone is up 92% year over year. And because the nature of the purchasing has fundamentally changed, NVIDIA actually, they restructured how they report their financials.
Oh, really? How so?
They're now dividing the business into data center and edge computing.
Got it. And within that data center bucket, I noticed they split the revenue into hyperscale and ACIE.
Yes.
Hyperscale is fairly straightforward, right? That's the massive public clouds, your consumer internet giants like AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure.
Exactly. And they make up about 50% of the data center revenue.
But I want to dig into that second half, the ACIE. What exactly is driving $37 billion in a single quarter from outside the tech giants?
So ACI stands for AI Clouds, Industrial, and Enterprise.
Okay.
And this is really where we see the diversification of AI dependency. It grew 31% just from the previous quarter.
Just in one quarter.
Yeah, because it encompasses purpose-built AI data centers and critically sovereign AI projects.
Wait, sovereign AI, like countries building their own AI?
Exactly. We are seeing entire nations realize they just cannot rely on foreign corporations for their digital infrastructure.
Oh, wow. That makes sense.
Right. So they're building their own sovereign intelligence grids. And when you combine that with legacy industrial enterprises waking up to the need for automation, you get this massive broadening influx of cash.
Which explains the shareholder returns, I guess.
Precisely. It's why NVIDIA announced a record $20 billion returned to shareholders, increased their dividend 25-fold, and authorized an $80 billion share repurchase program.
I mean, that is just a staggering amount of capital deployment.
It really is.
But let's look at the underlying economics of those data centers you just called AI factories.
Mm-hmm.
On the earnings call, management outlined a fundamental shift in how the industry measures the cost of computing.
The token economy.
Yeah, they're moving from dollars per core to tokens per dollar. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around how that alters a company's profit and loss statement.
Well, it completely rewrites the unit economics of the technology sector, honestly.
Oh, so?
So for the last 2 decades of cloud computing, businesses basically rented a computer processor, a core, and paid for the time they used it.
Right, like renting a car by the hour.
Exactly. If the server sat idle, you still paid for the time. But AI doesn't function on that model.
Right.
Customers today are building these massive infrastructure clusters to produce tokens, which are essentially the basic units of intelligence or data processed by a large language model.
So it's about output now.
Completely. The new metric of efficiency is entirely output-based. It's, how many tokens can you generate for every single dollar spent on infrastructure and electricity?
Hold on, I need to inject some skepticism here.
Yeah.
Because raising rental prices sounds great in theory,
Sure.
but these companies are spending billions on these new Blackwell chips. Like hundreds of thousands of units at a time.
Massive capital expenditures, yeah.
Is the return on investment actually there? Or are we just watching Silicon Valley throw infinite money at a hype cycle, hoping the underlying business model eventually catches up?
It's a fair question.
I mean, if I'm building a fully staffed digital manufacturing plant, the goods coming off the assembly line better be highly valuable.
The skepticism is totally warranted. But the data from the sources suggests the ROI is mathematically proving itself out right now.
Really? The numbers back it up.
They do. On the call, analysts noted that the price of renting an older generation H100 GPU in the cloud has actually risen 20% year to date.
Wait, renting older hardware is getting more expensive?
Yes. Think about the mechanics of that. The hardware is aging. The market supply of those specific chips is increasing, yet the rental price to use them is going up.
That is bizarre.
It only happens if the companies renting that compute power are generating highly profitable revenue from it. They are generating returns far exceeding the depreciable lifespan of the hardware.
So the tokens are that valuable.
Exactly. The tokens they manufacture are currently a highly scarce, highly valuable commodity.
So if you run a small business, today you pay for like software as a service subscriptions.
Right.
It sounds like in 3 years, you might literally be buying buckets of tokens to fund a digital workforce.
That's exactly where this is heading.
Which leads to the obvious question. If the output is that profitable, what new capability are we actually manufacturing? Because the basic one-shot chatbot experience feels like old news at this point.
Yeah, one-shot AI is indeed becoming a legacy concept.
By one shot, you mean like typing a prompt and getting a single answer.
Exactly. One-shot is reactive. You prompt a system with a question, it outputs an answer, and the interaction completely terminates. The system just sits dormant until a human initiates the next action.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
The transition driving these parabolic financials is the move to agentic AI.
Meaning the software becomes proactive.
Proactive, reasoning, and autonomous. Agentic AI systems are given a high-level goal, and they handle the execution themselves.
Give me an example of how that works.
Well, if you tell an agent to audit our Q3 supply chain logistics and find 3 areas to cut costs, the system doesn't just spit out a generic list. It plans a sequence of actions, it uses external tools to log into your enterprise software, it pulls the data, and critically, it spins off sub-agents.
Wait, it creates mini versions of itself?
Basically, yeah. It delegates the data analysis to one model, tasks another with running a physics simulation of shipping routes, and has a third compile the final presentation.
Wow. But I'm struggling to understand NVIDIA's hardware response to this. Specifically, their push into CPUs with their new Vera processor.
Ah, the Vera CPU.
NVIDIA essentially holds a monopoly in the GPU space, right? Spinning up a $200 billion total addressable market for CPUs feels like they're invading traditional Intel and AMD territory completely unnecessarily.
It might seem that way from the outside.
Why take on that massive competitive risk when their GPUs are already sold out for the foreseeable future?
Because the hardware architecture required for a reactive chatbot completely fails under the strain of an autonomous agent.
Really? The GPUs aren't enough?
No, because GPUs are spectacular at parallel processing,
Yeah.
doing the deep, heavy lifting of pattern recognition. But an agent requires a completely different kind of operational management to interface with external tools and orchestrate those sub-agents we talked about.
Let me try out an analogy here to see if I've got this.
Okay, go for it.
If the GPU is a massive, multi-lane highway capable of moving thousands of cars at once, the traditional CPU is a complex, hyper-fast, single-lane toll booth controlling access to that highway.
I like that.
So agentic AI requires so many rapid back-and-forth decisions, querying databases, spawning sub-agents, checking memory, that the traditional toll booth was causing a massive traffic jam. The highway was empty, but the on-ramp was totally blocked.
That perfectly illustrates the bottleneck. Digital agents possess zero patience.
Zero patience.
Right. When an agent decides it needs to cross-reference a database to continue its reasoning process, it expects that data retrieval to be instantaneous.
And traditional CPUs couldn't handle that.
Exactly. Traditional CPUs introduce latency that breaks the agent's cognitive loop. NVIDIA realized they couldn't just, wait for other companies to build a faster toll booth.
So they built their own.
They designed Vera. It's a custom ARM-based CPU built specifically to keep their GPU highway moving at maximum capacity.
And by pairing the Vera CPU with their new Rubin GPUs and tying it all together with their proprietary networking gear, they aren't just selling components anymore.
No, they're selling the entire ecosystem.
They're selling the fully constructed factory floor.
And the market is absolutely responding. They already have visibility into nearly $20 billion in standalone CPU revenue just this year.
That is wild.
They identified a bottleneck that threatened the scalability of agentic AI and engineered a highly lucrative solution.
Okay, but if agentic AI requires this level of instantaneous database access and zero latency processing, what happens when the physical distance to the data center creates a lag?
Now you're hitting on the edge.
Because, you can't put a $100 million server farm in the trunk of an Uber.
Yeah.
How is NVIDIA solving the unavoidable physics of distance?
That physics problem is the entire premise of NVIDIA's second major business segment, which is edge computing.
Right. The other bucket of revenue.
Yes. This is the transition to physical AI. Edge computing generated $6.4 billion this quarter alone, up 29% year over year.
And what exactly does it do?
It operates on the principle that data must be processed at the edge of the network locally, right where it is generated, rather than making the round trip to a centralized cloud server.
Because latency in the physical world isn't just an annoyance, right? It is literally a matter of life and death sometimes.
Absolutely.
If an autonomous vehicle detects a pedestrian, it cannot afford a 500 millisecond delay while it asks a server in Nevada if it should apply the brakes. The compute has to happen in the chassis of the car.
Precisely. The intelligence must exist at the point of action, and financial documents outline incredible partnerships focused on this exact mechanism.
I don't want to just, list off press releases here, but looking at the Uber partnership specifically really highlights how this works.
Oh, the robo-taxis.
Yeah. They are planning to power a robotaxi fleet across nearly 30 cities by 2028. How does NVIDIA's hardware actually process that environment locally?
It utilizes something called sensor fusion.
Sensor fusion.
Yeah, so NVIDIA's drive platform sits inside the vehicle, and it takes in simultaneous massive streams of data from radar, LiDAR, and high-definition cameras all at once.
Okay, so it's taking in everything around it.
Right. And it runs sophisticated, localized AI models to interpret that data, predict the movement of surrounding objects, and execute mechanical driving decisions in fractions of a second.
That's incredible.
It is. And this same concept applies to the partnerships they announced with Hyundai, BYD, and Nissan. They are putting localized AI factories on 4 wheels.
So the AI isn't just a chatbot on your browser anymore. It is the intelligence managing your city's power grid, the robotics building your consumer electronics, and the autonomous systems managing global shipping logistics.
Yeah, Jensen Huang summarized this shift perfectly by stating that while yesterday's computing was personal, the future is personal AI.
Personal AI.
Right. The long-term strategy here is aimed squarely at the world's $100 trillion heavy industries, manufacturing, transportation, agriculture.
The physical world.
Exactly. These are sectors that really haven't experienced the profound digital optimization we've seen in media or finance. NVIDIA is betting that physical AI, powered by edge computing, is the catalyst that finally automates that massive physical footprint.
Well, with $91 billion in projected revenue for Q2, it sounds like an unstoppable freight train. But I'm looking at their cash flow statements, specifically the $95 billion they spent in a previous quarter just to secure their supply chain.
It's a staggering expense.
Right. They are clearly hitting absolute physical limits. What are the actual grounded roadblocks threatening this growth?
The primary roadblock isn't a lack of corporate demand. It is the brutal reality of advanced node semiconductor manufacturing.
Which means what, exactly?
Well, to simplify a highly complex engineering challenge, it's not just about printing the silicon wafers. The real bottleneck is the advanced packaging, specifically technologies like CoWoS or chip-on-wafer-on-substrate.
Wait, which is essentially how you wire the different components together, right?
Yes, exactly. Think of it like trying to build a 10-lane highway interchange on the head of a pin.
Oh, wow.
You can manufacture the processor, and you can manufacture the high-bandwidth memory chips, but stacking them three-dimensionally and wiring them together so they communicate at light speed is incredibly difficult to scale.
I can imagine.
Global capacity for that specific packaging technique is severely constrained. Furthermore, the sheer physical infrastructure required to connect these data centers is leading to shortages in optical fiber.
Which is why NVIDIA had to announce that massive partnership with Corning, right?
Yeah.
To scale up U.S. fiber optic manufacturing tenfold.
Exactly.
It really hammers home that the cloud isn't some magical digital ether. It requires glass, copper, specialized resin, and immense amounts of electricity.
Very physical things.
Right. But beyond the physical constraints of the supply chain, there is a very prominent geopolitical roadblock detailed in these earnings, specifically regarding China. And I want to look at this neutrally, exactly as the financial analysts have modeled it.
Right. The geopolitical landscape is undeniably complex, and it directly impacts their forward-looking models.
How so?
While the U.S. government did recently approve licenses allowing NVIDIA to ship their advanced H200 chips to customers based in China.
Okay, so they can sell to them.
However, despite possessing those export licenses, NVIDIA has explicitly stated they are modeling exactly $0 in data center compute revenue from China for their Q2 outlook.
Wait, modeling $0 from one of the largest enterprise markets in the world? That is a massive red flag for a growth trajectory. Why freeze the forecasting if the licenses were approved?
The freeze is due to severe import uncertainties and shifting trade policies. Corporate forecasting requires predictability. Because there is a lack of clarity on whether those shipments will proceed smoothly through both U.S. export controls and Chinese import regulations, NVIDIA just cannot reliably recognize that potential revenue.
That makes sense from an accounting perspective.
Right. And simultaneously, the Chinese government is actively pushing its domestic tech sector to adopt local silicon alternatives.
Like hardware developed by Huawei.
Exactly, to insulate their infrastructure from these exact trade disputes. It represents a significant, highly unpredictable variable in NVIDIA's multi-year growth strategy.
Before we go any further, I need to jump in here and say, all the information and analysis we're chatting about here is just to help you better understand the market. It is not investment advice. Investing involves risk, so be sure to do your ample homework before entering the market or consult a professional financial advisor.
That context is really crucial right now, honestly. Financial analysts are forecasting that overall AI infrastructure spending is on track to reach $3 to $4 trillion annually by the end of this decade.
Trillion.
Trillions. But while NVIDIA holds an unprecedented market position, they are not immune to the laws of physics or international trade. Scaling advanced packaging capacity and navigating global supply chain fragmentation are very real, multi-billion-dollar hurdles standing between them and those trillion-dollar projections.
Let's pull all these threads together for a final review here. We started by looking at a staggering $81.6 billion in quarterly revenue, propelled by a fundamental shift in how corporations measure computing value.
Right, moving away from renting processing time to manufacturing output, measured in tokens per dollar.
And we explored how that shift is driven by the rise of proactive agentic AI, which requires such instantaneous data access that NVIDIA was forced to create the custom Vera CPU just to keep their GPU highways flowing.
Exactly. And then we tracked how that intelligence is moving out of the cloud and into the physical world via edge computing.
Powering localized AI models in everything from Uber's future robotaxi fleets to global industrial robotics.
And we grounded those explosive growth metrics in the physical realities of severe packaging bottlenecks and complex geopolitical trade tensions.
Really means a vivid picture of a technology that is actively rewriting the infrastructure of the global economy. Before we sign off, what is one final thought you want to leave the listener with as they process all of this?
I keep returning to that shift in corporate accounting. If computing costs are now measured entirely in tokens per dollar, and these massive AI factories are churning out autonomous digital labor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, executing complex tasks without human intervention,
Yeah.
how will society and the broader economy value human labor and human time in the next decade?
That is a profound question,
Yeah.
and one that extends far beyond a corporate balance sheet. We will definitely be exploring the societal impact of that shift in a future deep dive. Thank you to everyone listening for taking the time to unpack the mechanisms behind these massive numbers with us. Keep questioning the headlines, keep exploring the data, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.